You're listening to NYC Radio Live. David Ellenbogen here. I am thrilled to have the chance to speak with our guest. She is a, let's see, tell me how I'm doing. Incredible jazz singer, leader of large ensembles, big band. She's got her own big band. She has small, medium combos. She is a podcaster, a champion of women who are unsung and haven't been given their proper due. And she is going to be performing on the biggest stage of all, which is the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, and then off to Europe for some sold-out shows in Switzerland and Italy. How am I doing?
And then back, we're doing really well. And then back to New York.
Yeah,
May 7th. So yes, I'm thank you. What a lovely.
I didn't say your name, and it's Judith Owen. So
yes, there you go. I know it is Judith Owen here with this voice, with this particular accent behind. It's a good Welsh voice. But yeah, thrilled to meet you at long last.
Yeah. So I guess we can start at the beginning. From what I've read, you show business runs in the family.
Yeah, it does. It's I am, as I said, a good Welsh woman who's born into the family business, which is music, which is so often the case with Welsh people. It's probably why I ended up in living between London and New Orleans, I think, because New Orleans obviously has that same thing. But my father, we left Wales because my father was training to become an opera singer, and in fact, he did join the company at the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden, which is pretty much where I grew up backstage since I was a little nothing. He was a very, very successful opera singer. So it was in the house all the time, but he was really unusual and quite rare because he had the most incredible jazz, blues, Motown, soul. It was extraordinary, his collection. And my mother was a big band lover. And so I got to have what I feel is like the broadest musical education. It was just like there were no boundaries, there were no lines drawn. Music was just the vocabulary, and you listened to certain music for certain moods, but you never thought that one was that different from another. It was just like I knew so much, and lots of singing Welsh, depressing Welsh music in the minor key, of course. That always works well too. That really helps. And so I was singing in the house all the time, piano, playing it all the time, and it was just a very natural evolution that I would end up at the piano singing, writing. I was terrible. It turns out I have ADHD, which is one of the reasons I can't read or write. I can't actually concentrate that well on many things, but it turned into my superpower, as people I think realize that these things can, because it meant that all I wanted to do was to be at the piano writing music and singing. So that's really how it all evolved. But I'm still that person. I still blend all those things. That is my true love. And the women that you talk about me championing and wanting to not forget are those first women that he introduced me to. Your Nellie Lutchers, Julia Lees, Pearl Baileys, all these women that now have fallen by the wayside. I would not be here without them to guide me into how to be a braver, bolder woman.
So were those the first albums that kind of jumped off the shelf at you? It was the Nellie Lutcher and the Julia Lees, or was it other
Nellie Lutcher he played me this single of hers that he had got when he was a kid. And he'd been coming to London, and it was a big hit actually in the whole of Britain. And it was Fine Brown Frame. And so that was something that he played to me, and I just fell in love with it immediately. I just fell in love with how incredible a pianist she was, how unique she was, how witty and brilliant she was. But she was so unique, her style was really like nothing I'd ever heard before. And she was through and through entertainer. And so that's one of the first things I ever heard that was in that jazz and blues world. But it was always, there was so much music, but she was the first woman who made me kind of sit up and go, wow, that's a woman at the piano, and it's brilliant and it's joyful. And that is the word I always return to, I suppose, is joy. We listened to a lot of music that was about the joy, whether it was you know, Oscar Peterson or Ella Fitzgerald or Frank Sinatra or Errol Garner or, you know, whatever it was that era of jazz that was very blues based, but it was very much, it was joy bringing. And I think that was the thing that really touched me, really affected me deeply.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I mean, I did an interview recently with Joe Boyd. I don't know if he's on your map, but
I know Joe. Yeah,
you know
yeah.
Joe.
I know him. Yeah, I don't know him, but I know exactly who he is. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's such an amazing raconteur, and he was telling all these stories. And one kind of theory that he speaks about is he kind of feels he was wondering aloud, you know, why certain musics are full of this joy and other musics, and he was kind of associating with kind of there's a kind of art music of the upper classes, and then there's kind of the common music and of your everyday folks, and that's usually more joyful. And he wondered aloud why that was, and I didn't get a chance to interject, but I felt like the joy was essential for certain people. You can't have ironic music when your life is tough.
That's true.
Joy.
But I come from such a classical place that I would say that classical music, which is the foundations of everything, I suppose in many ways, is, of course, it can be joyful, but it's so much of it is like heartbreakingly, beautifully moving, you know. But it's still joy and sorrow, pain and laughter are the flip side of the same coin, and you cannot have one without the other. And I see it as and I don't dispute the ironic, take me seriously, I have no joy in this whatsoever music. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about our two biggest emotions, I think, are laughter and tears. I really do. But I would go so far as to say that the people who have the hardest lives, the deepest pain, know the best and the most about finding joy in the face of adversity. That's the reason I live in New Orleans, is because this city knows about that more than almost anywhere else that I've ever come across. And everything, of course, musical is about reaching that incredible celebratory place. That's exactly it. And I suppose in many ways it's like, when gospel music, when church music, when you have a Baptist choir, something like that, when that becomes secular and it comes out of the church and then it goes in, and then you start hearing it in the blues and in gospel music and R&B and everything else, it's, even the blues is joyful. Come on, it's about that. It's about having the blues, but it's joyful. And I think that's, in that way, I've never been drawn towards take me seriously, aren't I so clever music, or rather ironic music, as you put it. That really doesn't hold any interest for me. And I mean, I like so much music, but the music I love to play, the music I love to hear and to do, is the music that will make me and my audience and everybody that hears it feel joy. I feel huge passion. That's what it really is. It's passionate music. So I'm not interested in the I'm so cool I can hardly breathe. It's just never, I'm not that cool. I'm really not. But somebody said to me the other day, no, you are the coolest person we know. And because you are without artifice. So maybe that's what cool is. I don't know anymore. I've never figured it out at all. I'm so not mysterious, and I've never known what being cool meant. But yeah, I want something that makes me feel like my life is being lifted up. My heart's being lifted up. Yeah.
Yeah. No, a lot of your music is super joyful, and it was fun. It was fun to research because, I thought I've explored a lot of music, but Nellie Lutcher was one that had escaped me, and I was really blown away the way she does those unison lines and sings along and swings.
Swings so hard, and that's her on the piano being so rhythmic and using it like a percussive instrument, which of course the piano really is. But and the unison thing is really, really unique to her. Absolutely. I got to see her before she died when I came out for the first time to LA. in the late 90s. She was doing one of her final shows in the old Catalina Bar and Grill. And I was looking for something to do, and LA is not an easy place to get around. And I was so lonely. That's another thing, but I won't get into that. But anyway, and I looked up the LA Times, and in the calendar section, there was this advert that said Nellie Lutcher, you know, after 30 years, something like after 30 years of retirement, she's, you know, returns for 2 special shows. And I thought, no, what? How old is this woman? It can't be her. So I called them up and I said, can I just ask you how old the lady is? And they said, oh, she's definitely mid-80s for sure. And I was like, that's it. So I buy the tickets. I go down. I'm beside myself, and here she comes. And she's like she's a tall woman, but now she's a little smaller, and she's got a fur wrap around her, and she's wearing white gloves like Shirley Horn. And she gets the piano, and I think she started playing Real Gone Guy, and she may as well have been 21. The sound, the swing, nothing had changed. By the time she got to Fine Brown Frame, I just lost it, and I was just sobbing my heart out because she meant so much to me. You know, she really did. And if I met her today, I probably would have just like forced her to come to dinner with me and tell me everything about herself. But I embraced her and thanked her for so much, for me and my dad, for so much. But I got to know her family, and I'm good friends with her granddaughter, who was in that room too, and I didn't know. And they've told me so many incredible stories about Nellie. So many incredible stories about Nellie. So it's a very moving, to me, this is a very moving thing, that it starts with my dad as a kid, you know, a young man. And then I hear it and I fall in love. And then she was from, you know, Lake Charles, Louisiana. So she's from Louisiana. Then I end up here and I see her, and then I get to know her family. And in a weird way, it's kind of like I got to meet and to know Nellie, albeit through her family. And that really meant a huge amount to me.
Yeah, it's amazing how music can bring people and things. It's like this invisible force that brings people together.
It is the invisible force. It's a magical, primal, ancient thing that we all do and know. And, you know, anyone that's ever sung in a choir knows that if your heartbeat starts to sync up with another person's when you start singing, that is so extraordinary and otherworldly that you got to know that there's something really chemical and magnificent about this. And I, as a listener, as an audience member, and as the performer myself, I needed that music, that kind of music that Nellie brought and those women brought, and that joyful music, because I struggled for so much of my life, and I you know, I'm the flip side of the coin as well. I'm a very dark person inside, or have been, and you know, it's that need for joy, that need to be touched, to be reached, to feel like other people, you know, are in, that we're all in this together. I think that's what makes live performance so phenomenal. It really is.
Yeah. And you know, it's interesting, as I was listening to Julia Lee and the others, you know, you mentioned Nellie Lutcher and Blossom Dearie and all these people. I remembered that when I was in, I feel it was like high school or college, sometime before the internet was around, I had read in a book that all the original blues stars were women. And I couldn't confirm it at the time, you know, and then because you'd have to go to the library, and you know, I'd heard of Bessie Smith and some of these people, and sure enough, you know, all the first ones, you know, like I said, Bessie Smith or Victoria Spivey, or in the 1920s, it was all women.
Ma Rainey, yeah, ruled. It's an extraordinary thing, and I it's a great, and these women, the next woman, you know, the Julia Lees and Lutcher, they were the bridge, you know, they were the next generation who then became much more musicians, they were writers, they were at the piano. There was an incredible moment where women at the piano. I remember hearing Alicia Keys talking about her love affair with Hazel Scott. Same thing, hearing a woman at the piano. And there was this group, and it didn't last very long, of course, because it's probably seen as just being like a token thing, a whim of women being at the piano. It was, it was in fashion, but they were extraordinary artists and musicians. And there's a wonderful story about Ma Rainey, who, ruled like no woman has probably ruled before or since, who came into Lake Charles, Louisiana, and to do a show, and her piano went on a bender, and nobody could find him. And so they were looking for a piano player, and next thing they heard about this young girl that played piano in church, who was really great, and actually was a really good, played really, really great piano outside of church. That was Nellie. And so at 12 years old, Nellie is now playing for Bump and Grind Ma Rainey. And it's, to me, see, those are the stories that just, I think, are magnificent. And the fact that Nellie then ended up going to Hollywood and, became a star for a second, and was like, duetting with Nat King Cole and various people, and at the same time was being hideously ripped off, of course, by the label, and then dragged all like 15 members of her family with her. She was the breadwinner. She's taking care of everybody. She's doing it all. I mean, a magnificent woman who was treated like a queen when she got to Europe and Britain, where, because she was a huge star there. Which is how we got to know about her. My dad got to know about her. But these stories they're golden.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me because I'm curious to get your take. I had a theory bubbling up, because somewhere around the like 26 or something, I forgot it was, Lonnie Smith had a hit as a solo guitarist, and the economics changed, and suddenly when the Depression hit, that was the end of these women having hits who were fronting big bands. And it was more like, I guess you get to the 30s, the Robert Johnsons, this kind of thing, the solo male kind of, which became the archetype of the blues, even though it wasn't the original thing, right? And my theory was that probably because maybe Mick Jagger never wanted to be Bessie Smith. He wanted to be, he wanted to be Howlin' Wolf, and Clapton wanted to be Robert Johnson or something like that. So that was the era that attention got turned to, because, I don't know. What are your thoughts when you hear something?
Well, I think, the men will want to be like the men, and the women want to be like the women, and it's kind of as simple as that. And it's a business, as we all know, that is still very male. It doesn't matter how far you come, where you go, what you do. It's just still a very male business. I mean, I think jazz and blues for sure. I mean, I think if you actually, as far as amount of players or singers or front men and women compared to women compared to men, absolutely. So I think that when it came to the British invasion, as they called it, and the fact that the Stones had Howling Wolf, as their massive hero, and had him opening for them in Britain, in their shows. I mean, they were crazy about him. So of course, that was who they would be identifying with and wanting to be like, and there was that incredible, exciting, thrilling wildness on stage that man had. I mean, it was just, it's an extraordinary thing. And female wise, I don't think there's a woman on stage. And that's why I loved hearing Alicia Keys talking about Hazel Scott in that same way. If you're a woman at the piano, I mean, we're so different as artists and creatures. It's the funniest thing, it's a very different thing. I grew up, after I heard these women, my next big influence were people like Aretha Franklin, Stevie Wonder, Joni Mitchell. You know, I mean, it's just like that was the next succession. And but it was always something, there was always the piano there that really like was, you know, or that was always the force that held me. It's the person that sat at that instrument playing. And it was much more song based, but I think to be like a real blues rock and roll stars, particularly of that era in the 1960s, I think the Beatles were the same, of course. I mean, it's just like they were listening to Little Richard and thinking, good God, what is this? You know, I mean, it's just like, although, woo, you know, it's just like, you know, it's that you know, you hear Paul McCartney talking about it all the time. You hear that stuff, and it was the same thing. All this music was just flying. It was coming into the docks. It was coming into Liverpool. It was coming into London. It was coming into Wales. And whether it be, you know, that music, or whether it was Nellie, Lutcher, whatever it might be, that music was all coming in, and it was being listened to. And these were like, this is music that was heard on the radio everywhere. It was, you know, it was a different world. This wasn't America. This wasn't the play. You know, we didn't have the history. We didn't have the, you know, the racial overtones of any of this stuff. We didn't have that. There was nothing that, you know, we didn't have black radio, white radio. We didn't have any of that. You know, there was no such thing. That's not how we heard it. And so I think, you know, people in Britain and Europe heard this stuff like I heard it, you know, later again, and just thought, this is the most freeing, thrilling thing I've ever heard, because it felt so so alive and vital. And like the thing that you talk about with the Bessie Smiths and the Ma Rainey's, fearless. I talk about these women being unapologetic, you know, and I think that's obviously, you know, when you hear, if you've ever seen, anybody who's ever seen Howling Wolf perform or any of those performances, it's like, it takes your breath away. It's a fearlessness, which is just, it's the most extraordinary thing to be witness to. And yeah, it's there is no doubt why someone like me is here. That's all I can say. And many people like me that have ended up coming to America to really get that, you know, that get that fix on a place that they've always heard of. You know, it's the same with New York, but it's definitely that way in New Orleans, where people come because it's one of the last scenes, you know, music scenes, where you can actually go and hear a living, fresh, vital jazz and blues. I mean, it's not like this isn't a museum. This isn't where you're just playing stuff that you've always heard it forever and a day, and you're just hearing it being rehashed. This is like new, imaginative, wonderful, you know, young artists, people just like discovering stuff all the time, and so it goes round and round and round, and always will. And everybody borrows and steals, whichever you want to call it. Everyone's inspired. You're inspired by everything you know, everything you hear. Hopefully you'll then produce it in a way that is unique to you. That's really it.
I love that image you said of the music arriving at the docks, because back then it was literal, right? It was coming off a ship.
Yeah.
And
I heard, yeah, I mean, there was a great thing about the way McCartney and John Lennon were talking about this, about being in Liverpool docks, and that the sailors would come in who'd been like over to America, and they'd come in and they'd be bringing like literally their, like, you know, the gold dust, which was all the latest singles from America. They'd be bringing all this black music from America, and they were lining up, they were queuing to get this stuff because it was so thrilling and amazing, and nobody had ever heard anything like it. And that's pretty much, that we couldn't get enough of it. That's what my dad said. It was just like, you could not get enough.
And it's amazing too. I mean, thinking how the spark would fly back then it's person, other than radio, it's person to person. So it's groups of people whose minds are everybody is lighting up, you know, it's jukeboxes and that kind of thing. So
yeah.
It's such a human interaction, you know.
And again, what we went back to at the beginning, which is about it being joyful, you know, the idea that it's post-war, even still in the 60s, it was still rough. You know, my dad always talks about being in London and how like it was still bombed out. It didn't come back. You know, we'd been really, it was in a really bad way. And suddenly there's this shift and this exciting time. And because of this music that has traveled all the way across the seas, the world is changed. It is changed because of this, of what happened, because people are so affected by this joyful, extraordinary, alive music. And that is exactly what I'm talking about. And then turn around and bring it back to America. How ridiculous is that? With a different flavor, with a fashion forward British attitude. Okay. But ultimately, it changed the world as we know it, the music world as we know it. And it's crazy that it had to be that way, or that it had to go that down, you know, that it had to lap all the way around and come back. But that's what it did. And it did it because it made people feel hopeful and joyful and like they wanted to jump up and down screaming and dance and go wild. That's exactly what it was. After the hardest time historically that anybody had ever gone through, and the sadness and the grief and the loss that everybody had faced. So it was the most magnificent time musically.
Yeah. And the music, I mean, I've heard you speak about how when you say the women were unapologetic, they weren't just, it wasn't just sonically and musically. You seem to enjoy that I'm looking for the right word. Their subject matter wouldn't, would be considered blue or.
Oh, it was double entendre, my friend. Yeah.
Is not transcendent. I don't know, but yeah,
it was transgressive. Absolutely. And I, can you imagine? I mean, my dad's playing me and my sister this music. I didn't know what the bloody hell fine brown frame meant. All I knew was that it sounded joyful and it made me laugh, and I wanted to dance around the room, and I couldn't stop singing it. And I loved the way she played the piano. You know, as I started to mature, it was absolutely, obvious this was the sexiest thing going, and that it's about ogling a man, from looking at somebody and just like literally drooling. So I just love all these songs. Julia Lee was she was like the Kansas City queen of double entendre. The wit, songs like My Man Stands Out, King Size Papa. Come on. And that is another thing that I really, really adored, was just the sheer wit and smarts of these women. They're band leaders, by the way. They're running it. They're writing. They're at the piano. They're doing it. And they're so smart. They're so brilliantly smart, because it's not like vulgar and so like, I mean, they couldn't be in that era, in that day. They had to have some kind of smarts on it. But it's funny beyond belief. And what I loved is, yes, they're being blue. When you go back and listen to Ma Rainey and Bessie Smith, they're nowhere near as blue. But when I say unapologetic, it's because they had something that it took me my whole life. I say that they taught me this, and I think afterwards, when I made an album like 5 years ago, Come On and Get It, that was a celebration of all these songs and of them, that it reminded me and it helped to teach me once and for all to stop being such a pleaser and to actually not care so much what anybody thinks. It's like, this is who I am. This is what I do. You love me, you'll get me or you won't get me, and it's fine either way. you'll sad if you don't, you miss out. But the truth is, they had this air about them that was just like, this is who I am. Take it or leave it. That's it. And I love that. I love that confidence and it's very hard to get as a woman. I mean, I think any woman listening to this would agree, and it's hard for men too, but women have a particular struggle with not with just kind of going, yeah, you know, it's you get it or you don't. It's very hard to do that as a woman, but it's a beautiful place to be when you finally land and think, you know what, not everybody's going to like what I do, nor should they. Not everybody's going to want to be my friend, nor should they. And that's not what this is about. This is just about being your authentic self and having your honest voice. So I've always put them on high for that, because they were how they sounded is exactly who they were. And I find that to be very remarkable. I really do.
Yeah, and there's something about the double entendre and the wink that it does something strange to your brain, because you, as an audience member, you think, wait a second, is it me that thinks my man stands out? Am I coming up with this? Am I that lewd, or does she really say my
There's
man?
Nothing better in this. I tell you, as somebody from the perspective of somebody that's been singing this music live, there is a song that is a cover of a Dinah Washington song, which is so brilliant, because Dinah had that career where she was like, you know, in the main marketplace singing romantic songs, you know, that were extraordinary. And then she was on the black radio songs, which were thrillingly blue. I mean, they were witty, just like Julia Lee. And I introduced this song as being a heartbreaking love song about a woman who is searching for her love, and the name of it is Big Long Sliding Thing. And it basically, it's about a trombone player, you know, but the laughs that come from the audience is so wonderful, because it's a great song. It's brilliant musically. It is the height of the blues. It's raucous, it's bold, but the payoff, the punchline, oh my gosh, it's just one of the greatest things to do and see the audience reaction, you know. And not every song you want to be like that. That's not what this is about. But to have that wink is a skill set, and it's part of, to me, it's part of being an entertainer, being able to turn that on at times when I want to.
Yeah, I think that whole thing about doing a long introduction, which is actually kind of a misdirection of what the song is about. There's quite a few. I mean, I know Mississippi John Hurt would have so much fun with the song Spoonful, which is as filthy as it gets, giving this long introduction about how it's about Maxwell's coffee, and it was even called Coffee Blues. And, you know, you do a whole thing. And I don't remember if it was Julia Lee with the Snatch and Grab It, or one of those songs.
I love Snatch and Grab It. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I you know, the funny thing about doing their music is that now, when I've gone back to, you know, having what it taught me, I suppose, is that you can still have, even though I've gone now back towards my own writing, my own, which has wit and humor in it too, and there's, you know, going back to the record that I've just done, which is is going away from the double entendres, and going back to me at the piano, as well as with my fabulous band, the Callers. But doing that music allows you to do is to have that glint in your eye, that ability to kind of flirt with your audience. That means everyone. That means male and female. That's everybody. It allows you to do that in between songs, with your own songs, with your intros, as the person that's on stage, as the entertainer that I am, it's really a wonderful thing to have that level of confidence where you can have that wicked sense of humor. It's still there, and it comes through in what I do. I've always had it, but I think these women, listening to them, loving them so much in my life, returning them to them, they've given me so much confidence to be, like I said, to be absolutely who I am, but to just revel in it, to totally enjoy it.
That's amazing. I had one of the last interviews we posted was an old one I had done with George Ween, who's my old boss, who must be
yes.
Yeah. And yeah, I worked for him for a few years, and he was like a grandfather to me, and we conducted this interview, and he told this story of a time that jazz was not really recognized by the Academy yet.
Mm-hmm.
So he somehow got involved with some of the established critics, and it was a huge button-up affair, and their idea was to bring Louis Armstrong as the guest of honor. And you can probably guess where this is going to go. So
no,
it's everybody, it's a very, very formal, and they're trying to establish how this, what an important art form this is. And they give the award to Louis, and Louis, his acceptance speech is just telling one of his funny stories. So he said, yeah, every day I go to the restaurant, I look at a chalkboard, and I'd order the hamburger. And he said, every day. And then, so he's ordering the hamburger every single day. And one day, the waitress, right before he walked in, they were out of hamburgers. She crossed it off the chalkboard of the menu. So she said, I'm sorry, I just scratched what you like. And he said, well, then you better wash your hands. And this is the story that he told, this room full of academics and potential sponsors of the new as heritage organization of Harvard or whatever it was. So I'm just curious, like, it just made me think, like, why do you think a guy like Louis Armstrong, who basically, invented a lot of the elements of jazz, why would he want to knock it down a bit and bring it to that kind of more transgressive side? Like, does that add up to you?
I think Louis Armstrong, like a lot of well, him in particular, I think he got a very hard rap, I think he got I think I think his desire to be, both funny and to not take anything too seriously and to play the part of Louis Armstrong, in the era that he was in, doing what he was doing. I think it's very, there is a definite community of people, of players, who think of him as being, kind of like being anti sort of serious, self-respect, that kind of thing. It's sort of like, because he was like an incredible entertainer, because he was fun and funny and brilliant and didn't take anything, because he was playing the role of Louis Armstrong, because he was an entertainer, and what he was doing, and the music, God knows, was phenomenal, as we know, and that's all there is to it. But I think he gets a bad rap from generations of jazzers, maybe, that are sort of like found that to be less than respectful, or was playing into, you know, the white view of how black artists should be, how they were playing up to it. Was he playing up to it? You know, it's but actually I think that the more and more I see this and the more and more I hear it, and knowing more and more about what it is to be a musician and artist from New Orleans, I think Louis Armstrong was absolutely of this city, and this was his nature, and this is how he was. He was also a very, very serious man. His wife was a phenomenal musician too. He was a serious artist who did a job very seriously, and his job was to be an entertainer. And that's the world he grew up in, and that is the school that he grew up in, and that's the sublime music that he played. He played joyful music. That was the job. And it's very much to me, it's still very much about what the music is of this city and of this place, because it still goes back to, you know, it's a piano city, but it's a brass city. This is a brass city, and street bands, brass music in the streets. It still goes back. It still has that flavor. It is that thing. And I think, I don't know. I think there is a very much what comes with that is a sort of, I don't take myself too seriously. I don't think that I'm anything great. You know, there's a sort of there is a much more sort of laissez-faire attitude towards it. It's not seen as being, you know, biblical or anything. It is seen as, this is what I do, this is what I've always done, this is what everybody does, this is what was passed on to me, this is my life, this will always be my life. And so when you ask me that, why would he do why would he tell a joke like that? Because it's who he is. I will give you an example. All right, here's another one. I was at an awards event here, and there's a band called Galactic who are pretty big, and they were winning an award. And again, it was filled with a whole bunch of, you know, it was part theatrical. There were big sponsors, beneficiaries, blah blah blah. They win something, and they're all so high. That could be another part of it, by the way. I just want to point that out. With Armstrong, he could have been high as a kite. So let's just stop right there. Anyway, they all say, thanks, this is great, whatever. And then somebody from the band gets up and says, I haven't had this much fun since I stuck my blank in the mashed potato. And the whole place, isn't that a great line? I couldn't breathe. I was laughing so hard. I was screaming because I understood it. The desire was to actually throw a bloody, you know, was to really throw like a little teeny bomb into this uptight, everybody's taking themselves too seriously, who gives a shit sort of situation. And they were all high as kites. So I think maybe that's the answer. Maybe how's that?
That is the answer. And that's what I thought. I mean, yeah.
Right. But it is very New Orleans. This is what I mean. It's so New Orleans. I look at my trumpet player, Kevin Lewis, Mr. New Orleans. And Louis is just like his God. But Kevin, it says some of the funniest things I've ever seen in my entire life. He doesn't, it's music is his religion. It's why he gets up in the morning. It's his air. But will you ever hear him saying something that's, you know, that is, I'm taking myself really serious? No. What counts is what you play and what you sound like when you play and when you're giving it everything and your heart and soul's in it. And he's also always high as a kite. There you go.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it was just like that. It's almost like he foresaw that there's going to be these forces encroaching who became very powerful and made jazz this academic subject. And you get, you know, and it was almost like it's like an act of resistance towards that, you know, and being like, hey,
I agree with you, and that's what I meant by the take me seriously. Is it's like this isn't museum. This isn't museum pieces here. This is music that's meant to make you feel good and make you want to dance around the room and put a smile on your face. Anybody that tries to hijack it, as it has been, because it somehow now needs to be, listened to with a glum face, looking deep and meaningful. There's room for that. It's brilliant. Don't get me wrong. There's room for everything, but please don't take it too far. Sometimes, don't forget where it came from. It came from the brothel and church. Let us not forget where this music comes from. It's that's the truth of it, and it always will be. So I was kind of I mean, you and I are agreeing on this. I think it was probably it was an act of defiance. Yes, it is. Whenever you're in a situation where everybody's taking things too seriously, and as if it's like, it should be studied in college, you just want to throw a spanner in and just and just and just crack them. I mean, break that situation, because it's just it's not the point of music. That's it.
So it must be quite an incredible feeling to be in front of a full big band. I mean, that must be such a visceral thrill.
It's visceral. I've got this. So the album, the latest one, "Suit Yourself," comes out tomorrow. And then I'm doing a huge launch party for it the next day. Jazz Fest, first weekend of Jazz Fest.
That's crazy.
And it's my band, the Callers, and then it's the J.O. Big Band.
Mm-hmm.
And I was rehearsing with them yesterday in the venue that we're playing in. I every single time I do this, I have the same thought, which is, if you don't smile when you hear this music, there's something, you must be dead. You must have died on your way here. You must have died when you were being seated, because it's kind of like the rock and roll of its time. It really is. It's like, instead of having Marshall amps, you've just got 18 brass, whatever it might be. There's your Marshall amp right there. So standing in front of it, singing is it's a power high, like I can't begin to tell you. And of course, I also grew up with a great love of Nelson Riddle, who I really felt was, between him and Quincy, but Nelson Riddle ruled my heart, as it did my mother's. And so my arranger is a guy called John Wasson, who also happens to be a trombone player. Isn't that interesting? As was Nelson Riddle. And it's very interesting to me that they have those ears. They have those ears for intervals and for blending of the horns. So there's no high like it, I must say. And as a woman who likes to be in control on stage, I mean, in front of these amazing musicians, it's about as good as it gets, I must say. It really is.
Yeah, and even the Gentlemen Callers, it's a smaller ensemble, but they have a big band sound. Like I was actually, yeah.
They're all stars in their own right, and together we're it's so funny. We're all such different human beings. We're all so very, very different as people, but that's the key. That's the chemistry. Because when you come together, you play like you are, and then we all, this kind of rabble, come together and play. It's the chemistry is extraordinary. And I've somebody wrote about this in one of the European shows that I did recently, about how it felt at times like we were all thinking with one brain. And that's a very smart thing to say, because there are times when it feels like we're all like, there's one brain, and we're all and we're all sharing it. And that's such a heightened state. And I'm a very energetic performer. I mean, I bring energy in because I'm a passionate person, and that's how I sing, it's how I play. But these wonderful players, whether it's, David Tukanowski on the piano, and I said Kevin Lewis on cornet and flugelhorn, Ricardo Pascal on sax, Dave Blankhorn on guitar, Lex Warshawski on double bass, and the fabulous Jameson Ross on drums, and then my percussionist Pedro Segundo. So it's what happens is that they meet my energy, and they say that themselves. It's because I'm always so thrilled that just when I think somebody's solo can't get any more fantastic, the next person will step in and it'll just go higher. It's like seeing comedians just top each other with jokes, it just gets higher and higher, and it's not for the sake of it or how many notes am I playing. It's all about enhancing the song, enhancing the music, enhancing the emotion. And it's so gratifying to be with people who, wherever you lead, they will go and then keep going. So I never expected to find this. It's just a huge surprise that came, like I said, in COVID, where I was down and depressed like we all were, and scared and anxious, and thought that I'd make a record that was an homage to my female, my role models, and those women, the Nellies and the Julia Lees, and that turned on a switch in my head. And then I worked purely, because before that I'd always been a very jazz and blues inspired singer-songwriter at the piano with incredible musicians. This made me turn it up and absolutely go on that route, fully into that place that I'd always loved. And it allowed me the freedom to get up from behind the piano. It allowed me the freedom to be, like I said, big and bold, which allowed me then the freedom to get in front of a big band. Because you do need ridiculous levels of confidence to be able to do that.
Yeah.
It's not for the weak of heart to stand in front of a big band and sing. But it's the most exhilarating thing that I've ever experienced, I must say. And so it's I'm listening to those Frank Sinatra and Ella Fitzgerald records, Dinah Washington, all the greats. It's so thrilling to hear that again. And what's really nice is how audiences still, that's what I mean. It's like this is classic music. There is a classic thing that happens. When I say classic, I mean there is something that just never fails to connect with listeners and audiences. And people, when they see a big band, when they hear a big band, I did a big band at Jazz Fest last year. It's extraordinary. It's powerful. It's you get goosebumps. You get the hair stands up on the back of your neck, and it's an art form that is rarely seen anymore. But when you do get to see it, but with players who swing, and again, don't treat it as if it's a museum piece, who are just reading and not enjoying. That's the key. That is the key to all of this. And I think that's just something that comes from this city very much. I've seen big bands in Europe, and they're great. Don't get me wrong. They're great. Of course, in New York, fantastic big bands who know exactly what they're doing. But the thing that I always find that if anything ever lets down a big band, it's just the fact that people are reading and they're not feeling. And this is feeling music. This is about having that your heart is in it.
When you're mentioning big and bold, and I'm curious how conscious you are about kind of your stage craft, if there's anybody you model your kind of on stage moves after, or how you're holding yourself, or are there?
It's a good question. Yeah. Well, this is going to make you laugh. I remember it's a couple of things actually. I think that I trained in a kind of, like, I did one of those Brit school courses. That's what I trained as when I was a kid. So I wanted to be an actress and a dancer. So that came incredibly very handy when it comes to actually being on stage. I didn't think anybody would ever take my music seriously. It turns out they did. So that changed. But the very nature of learning, having that love of dancing, which I always had, and learning those things and feeling comfortable in your body and movement. And that's what a lot of it's about. Being an actor helps when it comes to interpreting songs and selling things, actually really making your audience see it, owning the songs. When you cover a famous classic, somebody else's song, I believe it has to feel like you wrote it, like it's about your life. And I always choose songs that I can relate to in my own life, that make it personal to me, because I want the audience to feel like that I mean every word that I say, and that's important to me. And I think stage wise, that craft. When I watch myself on stage, because of course I'm not really aware of what I'm doing, I just pace up and down like some big cat, just walking up and down. But I can't help but, I'm always moving. If I'm up as opposed to behind the piano, that goes without saying. Then I'm rock woman, and then I'm jazz rock woman, just like pounding away. But when I'm on stage, I have this. I have a weird mixture of being like moving like a stand-up, where I'm just like I said, like I'm roaming. Or I remember seeing Tom Jones when I was a kid and thinking, man, he's great. That man could move really. But of course he was taking his moves from James Brown, and he was seeing all those artists and doing that thing, of like, just let it fly, go. And but I love artists, and I love performers who naturally have the rhythm, their bodies are almost part of the music. They're it's coming through your body, not just through your mouth. The sound is coming out of you, yes, but it's also coming out of your very being. And maybe it's because I've always seen dancers, maybe it's because I've always been steeped in that as well, of seeing expression through dance, the way that music is expressed through the physical movement. But it's something that has always been very important to me, or I've felt it's just natural to me. I cannot actually stay still. Now that's because I have ADHD as well. That's like saying that's probably because he was high, but I have ADHD. So honestly, I can't stay still when I hear music. If I'm in the audience listening to it, I can't stay still. So imagine I'm on stage now. It's impossible. It's impossible. But yeah, I'm just a big fan of, and I remember seeing early on as well, one of the things that my dad played me as well was Pearl Bailey with the Cootie Williams Orchestra. And that's the first big band I ever heard, in all honesty. Cootie Williams, oh my good grief, what a trumpet player. So that blew me away. And you see, since I've been a kid, I've always been pretending it was me on stage. I'd put my headphones on, like we all do, and it'd be me dancing down the road, thinking that I was whoever I was listening to. It was me. But who I thought I was, actually I ended up being. Isn't that the great irony in life? And thank God I never saw that coming. But I was always dancing, always dancing, always dancing. And when I saw Pearl Bailey for the first time, she had a TV show in America. I didn't know anything about this. I knew she was an extraordinary woman, brilliant, intelligent, married. What's the name of the drummer? Louis Belson. In a mixed race marriage that wasn't allowed, so they got married in London. Of course they did. Brilliant woman. But her TV show I saw only a few years ago on YouTube, snippets of it, my chin was on the floor because, again, she was moving, dancing, like everything was coming out of her body, everything. Extraordinary performer. And that's it. I think I've always yearned to be and wanted to be an entertainer, but a truly great performer. And then I think mixed with that, my mother's obsession and now and mine with musicals, with great American musicals, the classic musicals. So to me, the singing, dancing thing kind of, it's an extension. It's all wrapped up for me. So, and here I am. Yeah.
Is there favorite period of time in music, like that you're, and like the vaudeville era or the, I don't know, is there a certain period that like just this like if you could be in a time machine and you could do your act anywhere, is it right now, or would you or as a girl when you're
it's really hard to say that because on the one hand, when it's my music and when I'm at the piano playing, there could not be a better time for me than now, because it's still I'm doing blues-based jazz, but it also has rock and pop in it. It has bits of classical in it too. It blurs many things, but ultimately it's about songcraft. And I love the era where these were the pop songs of their time. That is that's what I grew up hearing. So the 40s, 50s to me was that was the absolute greatest. So and same thing with visually thinking about a film like Singing in the Rain or something like that, where it's phenomenal music, phenomenal dancing, phenomenal singing. It's all that era. Sinatra at Capitol, Ella, all that's my favorite. Miles' time is in the 50s. It's just that time. My favorite visuals are Herman Leonard, all that time. And I think that doesn't mean to say that I would have wanted to be back there, because it's every bit as brutal, probably more than it is even today. But what I love right now, I would have liked to have seen it, of course. And yes, I feel like I got to see I was so fortunate to see some people before they left this planet, who were from that time, not able to do it like that. But I'm such a fan of that period. But I'm really happy to be living in a time where I can bring a fresh feeling, a contemporary feeling to some of the most extraordinary, some of the greatest songs and most brilliant music imaginable. And I can also be writing my own and having that songwriter career that I have within this, because it's all within this same world. I'm very grateful to be living in a time, because sometimes, you have to wait for the world to catch up with you, that kind of feeling. The business has always been so much about, you just do that one thing. You just do that one thing and stay in your lane, because then we'll know how to sell you, the pigeonholing, so you can be sold. And I mean, and everybody has fell victim to that. Nellie, Julia, once their time was done, once they'd gone on to another fashion, that was it, over. That's how the business has always been. I'm living in a time where lines can be blurred and people are accepting of them, because the public has access now to everything they want. And it's okay to love many different things. It's like, you don't have to just like this one thing, otherwise those people over there don't like you. It's not, it's a much broader, less blinkered experience that everybody's having. I love the fact that John Baptiste can win Best Americana. I think it's bloody brilliant, because when you talk like you did at the beginning about, the difference between wanting it to be this higher thing that only a few people understand, all the people's music, it's all the people's music. And we should constantly be reminded of that. And music is our language. It is our oldest primal, most important language that we have. And all these styles and these genres are dialects within that. And we should be able to speak, or we should choose to speak in whatever dialect we want to. And if we blur the lines, all the better for it. Because if you don't mix the gene pool a bit, you end up with something very dull. I think you know what I mean. But, you know, nobody wears the same clothes every day. Nobody wants to eat the same meal. Why the hell would you want the same thing in your music? So I'm happy to be here at a time when that is being accepted and appreciated, and where I can be this, you know, mouthy woman, this unapologetic woman, big performer on stage, be exactly who I am and actually be appreciated for it. So as much as I would have loved to have seen that, I'm very happy to be where I am right now.
Well, this was super fun. Thanks for taking the time to chat. Yeah.
You.